The forest was already swallowing the last traces of daylight when David Harlan keyed the engine of his truck and let the silence settle around him like a thick blanket. He had driven nearly 3 hours into the Washington backcountry, far beyond the logging roads, beyond the rickety hunting cabins, beyond anything resembling civilization, simply because the place had been calling him. He couldn't explain it. For months, he had been walking at night with a strange pressure in his chest, a wordless insistence pushing him toward the wilderness as if something out there was waiting for him. His friends laughed it off, calling it a midlife hunting crisis, but deep down he felt something else. Something older, heavier, something watching. He stepped out of the truck, boots crunching softly over a carpet of fallen needles. The air was sharp with the scent of pine and damp earth. Somewhere far off, a river murmured like a restless sleeper turning in the dark. David pulled his backpack onto his shoulder, locked the truck, and started toward the narrow trail that led deeper into the woods. He had planned to reach a ridge overlooking the valley before nightfall, but the fading light meant he would have to camp somewhere closer. As he walked, the forest felt wrong, not dangerous, exactly, but alert. As if every tree had paused its ancient stillness to watch him pass. The quiet wasn't natural either. No birds, no insects, not even the distant crack of twigs that usually signaled deer. Just the steady rhythm of his own breath and the faint, almost inaudible tapping of branches shifting in the cool breeze. He kept glancing over his shoulder, half expecting to see someone following him, but the trail behind him remained empty. The deeper he went, the more the silence pressed in. At one point he caught the faint scent of something, musky, animal-like, but heavier, thicker, as if it clung to there rather than drifted through it. He paused, sniffed again, and shook his head. Just a bear, he thought. Or maybe elk, but something inside him whispered no. This was different. By the time he reached a small clearing, dusk had fallen completely. The sky had turned the color of bruised skin, and the first stars were trembling into existence. David dropped his pack and began setting up camp. His hands moved with practiced ease, tent staked down, small fire laid but not yet lit, sleeping bag unfurled. After years of hunting trips, survival weekends, and backcountry hikes, there wasn't much that could rattle him. But even as he worked, a restless sensation nagged at the back of his skull, the same one he had felt for months. It pulsed like a heartbeat that didn't belong to him. He stopped what he was doing and listened. A soft crunch echoed from the tree line. Not a falling branch, not an animal darting through underbrush. It was too heavy, too deliberate. Footsteps, slow, measured. David's stomach tightened. He walked to the edge of the clearing, peering into the dense tangle of trees. The shadows between the trunks seemed to ripple and breathe. He took one more step and froze. Something moved, tall, massive, like a darker shadow slipping between the others. He couldn't make out details, just the impression of height, bulk, and a strange, smooth way of moving that didn't match any animal he'd seen. Hello, he called, though he wasn't sure why. No one was supposed to be out here. Not this far, not this deep. The forest swallowed his voice. A moment later, the shape vanished. No sound of retreating footsteps. No rustle of branches. Just gone. David backed up toward his camp, forcing a shaky laugh. Probably a trick of the fading light. Trees can play games with your eyes if you let them. But even as he reassured himself, he couldn't shake. The instinctive dread humming through him, an ancient, primal fear whispered into the bones of early humans and never quite forgotten. Night settled quickly. He lit the fire, small flames crackling as they ate through the tinder. The word MTH should have comforted him, but instead it made him feel exposed, as if the light announced his position to anything lurking beyond the tree line. He cooked a simple meal, beans and jerky, nothing fancy, and tried to relax. But somewhere beyond the golden edge of the fire's glow, he heard it again. A branch snapping, then another. Too heavy for deer, too intentional for wind. Held still, spoon halfway to his mouth, breath frozen in his lungs. This time he didn't call out. The forest remained dark, but every hair on his arms stood up as if a static charge hung in the air. He couldn't see anything, but he felt it. Being watched, closely, intently, a silent, patient gaze that studied him with something like curiosity or hunger. David dropped the spoon, stood up, and grabbed his flashlight. SWPT the beam across the trees. From one trunk to the next. From shadow to shadow. Every flicker of movement, every shifting shape, sent a hold through him. Nothing. The forest remained still, exhaled slowly and turned back toward the fire, when another sound froze him in place. A low, guttural exhale. Not human, not animal, something in between, something too big, too deep, too resonant. It vibrated through the clearing like the growl of a furnace buried underground. David's chest tightened until it hurt. He forced the flashlight upward, toward the direction of the sound. Then he saw the eyes. Two enormous amber eyes reflecting the firelight from behind the trees. They were set too high off the ground, 8 feet, maybe 9, and too far apart for any known predator. They didn't blink. They didn't move. They just stared at him with a cold, intelligent stillness that made his breath stutter. Jesus, he whispered, stepping back. The eyes blinked once, and then the creature stepped forward. He didn't hear it walk. It was simply there, emerging from the shadows like a nightmare-taking shape. Massive shoulders, thick, matted hair, a silhouette so broad it seemed to swallow the path behind it. Its head almost brushed the lower branches. Its arms hung long, ending in hands too large, fingers too thick, knuckles brushing the ground like a prehistoric relic. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a man. It wasn't any animal recorded in his hunting guides. It was something else, something ancient, something that didn't want to be seen. David stumbled backward, nearly falling into the fire. For a moment, man and creature stared at each other across the clearing, separated only by a ring of light that felt far too thin to offer protection. Then the creature tilted its head slightly, studying him. It didn't bare its teeth. It didn't roar. Its expression held no rage, only a strange, unnerving curiosity, as if it were trying to understand what he was doing in its world. David's breath came fast and shallow. His instincts screamed for him to run, but his legs were locked in place. The creature took another step forward, and the ground seemed to tremble beneath its weight. A single thought cut through his fear. This thing could kill me without even trying. The creature made a low rumble, not aggressive but almost questioning. David slowly raised his hands, palms outward, not knowing what else to do. The creature tensed, almost imperceptibly, as if deciding how to react. Then something changed. A distant howl echoed across the valley, long, mournful, and eerily familiar. Not a wolf, not a coyote, something bigger, something that sounded like it came from deep within the earth. The creature's head snapped toward the sound. It listened, its muscles tightened, the air around them seemed to thicken. A second howl answered, closer, then a third, even closer still. David's blood ran cold. There wasn't just one. The creature glanced at him again. Its gaze hardened, as if warning him. Then, with a sudden, powerful stride, it retreated into the shadows, silent and swift despite its size. The howls grew louder, more numerous, moving through the forest with deliberate coordination. David extinguished the fire with frantic sweeps of dirt, plunging the clearing into darkness. He crouched low, heart hammering so loudly he feared it would betray his position. The forest around him vibrated with movement, heavy steps, branches snapping, low growls passing through the trees like messages exchanged in a forgotten language. He didn't see them, but he knew, the creature that had stood before him was not alone. And whatever called to it across the valley was drawing closer by the minute. He stayed there, frozen, praying the darkness would swallow him. The footsteps circled the clearing, sometimes so close he could hear the thud of massive feet pressing into the soil. At one point, a large shadow passed in front of him, blocking out the faint glow of the stars. He didn't breathe, didn't move, didn't blink. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the forest fell silent again. No footsteps, no growls, no breathing, nothing. David didn't move until the first gray light of dawn began filtering through the trees. Only then did he gather his things with shaking hands and stumble back toward the trail. He didn't look back, didn't pause, didn't stop moving until he reached the truck and slammed the door shut. He never returned to that part of the forest. But he never forgot the eyes. Or the way the creature looked at him, not with hostility, but with recognition. As if it knew something about him that he didn't know about himself. As if the cold that had drawn him there wasn't finished. And sometimes, even now, in the quiet hours before dawn, he wakes with that same pressure in his chest. That same whisper urging him back into the woods. As if something is still waiting.